Sadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Dalita Shri Vishakhan Rutamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalptarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paśatya Deshatarine Hare Krishna. So it's a great privilege, it's a great blessing indeed to have an opportunity to discuss and share the learnings and the knowledge of Bhagavad-Gīta. So far we have covered in the last several sessions the first chapter, which is the foundation of Bhagavad-Gīta, and what we saw is the situation of Arjuna, that how much Arjuna is arguing. Arjuna is in argumentative mood. He is not agreeing. So all of us have two, options. One is to argue, or the other is to agree. And we see if we agree with our superiors, if we agree with those who are advanced than us, then we gain to benefit. But if we choose to argue, then what is the situation? That is very much manifested through the character of Arjuna. The second chapter very beautifully gives the psychophysical situation of Arjuna. So we also see in our lives. So Bhagavad-Gīta relates, every verse of Bhagavad-Gīta can be related to our real life situations. We always have this crossroad. We are always at the verge of crossroad, where we are not able to decide what to do, what not to do. So there are options available. Either we can agree, or we can argue, or refute. So we see Arjuna takes the typical conditioned soul situation, as most of us. We are all guided mainly by our own intellect and by our own mind. And the mind forces us to have a choice which is based on his liking. So Arjuna, according to his own attachment and aversion, is arguing. And I have the presentation. I'll share the presentation also with you. So we will do a little recap. For how many of you are joining for the first time who have not attended the first chapter? You can raise your hand. If you want, you can switch on your video as well. And if not, then you have the choice again. It is your choice. You can raise the hand. Okay. So few hands have gone up. So I'll give a brief recap of what the first chapter is, so that we can have the I hope the screen is visible.
Yes,
so the first chapter talks about the two scenarios. First, the first 27 verses talk about the relative strength of the armies, both on the side of Pandavas and the Kauravas. And initially, the Bhagavad-Gita starts very interestingly with one verse, which is the only verse which is spoken by Dhritarashtra. So this first verse spoken by Dhritarashtra reveals the mindset of Dhritarashtra. As we speak, it's very important. How can one know what is the level of the other person? What you have to do, you have to just make him speak. Because as soon as he speaks, as soon as he, utters the word, through the word that he speaks, you can know his mind. What is the situation or scenario of his mind? So, Dhritarashtra mindset is revealed through the first verse of Bhagavad Gita, which very much uncovers the reality inside the heart of Dhritarashtra, that he is very doubtful. He is very doubtful and he is very fearful. And of course, he is very partial because he wants that the kingdom should remain with his sons. So the partiality of Dhritarashtra has been exposed in the first verse. And the lesson we learn is that Dhritarashtra, being the king, he was duty bound to go by the religious principles, that's dharma. But because being partial and very much attached to his son, he compromised on the dharma. So whenever we are not following dharma, so what we are always insecure. There is always an element of doubt and fear in our heart. So that is exhibited very much by the character of Dhritarashtra. So he speaks the first verse, very, very popular verse. Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yujutsava, Mamaka Pandavashcheva, Kimakurvat Sanjaya. Then after Dhritarashtra spoke, then his son Duryodhana speaks. He speaks more than one verse. Of course, whatever Duryodhana is speaking is being, commented through Sanjay. So Duryodhana's mindset is also revealed. So what is Duryodhana's mindset? Duryodhana is very proud. Very, very proud. His false ego is very high. So he is boasting or bragging about the strength of his army. But still, the element of insecurity is there in the heart of Duryodhana. He is not very reliable of the most formidable warriors on his side, which is Bhishma and Drona. So he is doubting the loyalty of his most formidable warriors, his elders. And another aspect is he is very much eulogizing the strength of his army as compared to the armies of the Pandavas. Also, he indirectly hints to his commander-in-chief and also his guru Drona that it is because of them that they are faced in such a war-like situation with a formidable force opposing the Kaurava army, which is from the Pandava side. But irrespective of whatever Duryodhana may try to portray or show, the signs are very evident. So the Bhagavad Gita, the signs of victory for the Pandavas is very much reflected in the first chapter itself. We spoke about it. And when the conch shells were blown from both the armies, the hearts of the Kaurava's army was shattered. Why? Very important learning is because if we have not taken shelter of the Supreme Lord, if we are not guided by a spiritual master, then always we will have this insecurity of the heart. So that insecurity of the heart is exhibited through the character both of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Whereas the Pandavas and the men who are on the side of the Pandavas, their heart is completely peaceful. They are assured of victory. Why? Because Krishna is on the side. I'll try to make it the full screen one. So that is the chapter 1 that we discussed. The setting scene is first 11 verses. Then all auspicious Krishna is from 12 to 20, which also includes the sign, the favorable sign or the evidence of the war or the outcome of the war, that for Kauravas there is no scope for victory. Why? Because they were not following the path of Dharma. So Dharma Rakshita Dharma. Whoever follows the path of Dharma is surely protected by Dharma himself. And the third section was that how much Krishna loves his devotee. And the biggest evidence of it is Bhagavad-Gīta itself. That the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he volunteered, he willingly becomes and takes the position of becoming a chariot driver of his devotee. And then the second section talks about the bewilderment of Arjuna or his lamentation. That is the miseries of life. And in real life situation, we are always faced with situations of lamentations. Lamentations, why? Because there are very high expectations. And when the reality does not meet those high expectations, there is profound bouts of lamentation. And so Arjuna is exhibiting those lamentation here. I'll just give a little recap. So Arjuna is saying that when I see on the other side of the army that my friends and my relatives are present there in such a fighting spirit, Arjuna becomes compassionate. Why compassionate? Because of his bodily relationships. And the bewilderment of his mind, it pushes him to such an extent that his body starts to quiver and his mouth is drying up. Vyaputascha sharire me rom harshasya jayate gandivam sansate hasta chakdeva parijayate. Even his skin starts to burn. Not even an arrow has been shot. But what is burning? His heart has started to burn. Why? Because of excessive attachment. So our attachments are our greatest weakness. It forces even formidable warriors like Arjuna, and we saw the case of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana also, that they become so weak. Outwardly, one may show that he is having strength, he is having ability, but inside, what is the situation inside? Inside, one is very weak. So there are three types of miseries which inflict everyone. Whoever is there in this material creation is inflicted by three kinds of misery. Adhyatmika, the miseries which are coming from one's own mind and one's own body. Our mind is the chief source of inflicting the maximum share of miseries in our life. And Adi Bhautika means that is coming by other people. Misery coming from our mind is, one simple example is negativity. Negativity which the mind breeds every moment. It makes us always doubtful. And with the doubt comes the insecurity. And Adi Bhautik is by other people. Like you want to take a good sleep, but what happens in the dead of night? There is a mosquito who comes and bites you. And it spoils your sleep. Or there are terrorists, Adi Bhautik, who for no rhyme or reason, they disturb the peace and tranquility of the society. So these are the examples of Adi Bhautika, and Adi Devika is the natural disturbances or the disturbances which are superhuman, which is beyond the control of human being. Like what I see today, I was hearing news recently that India is now being, endangered by the flood-like situation. Many states are in a very grim situation with flood, excessive rain. Either there is famine or there is excessive rain. Both bring so much of miseries to the humankind. So Arjuna is so bewildered, he is so perplexed. So although he came to fight, but because of his uncontrolled mind, his heart, which is burning with attachment, and the insecurity inside, he decides he will not fight. And Arjuna starts to argue. Arjuna starts to give one reason after the other. So in the first chapter, we discussed Arjuna's first four reasons. First was that he said of compassion, that he is having compassion for his opponents, for his rivals. So he cannot kill. Rather, he wants to leave the battle. But second is more realistic, where he confesses, where he accepts that he does not want to fight because after the gain or victory, he will not be able to enjoy the kingdom because of the loss of the family members. So because he cannot enjoy the kingdom, so he does not want to fight. That is more realistic. Because all of us, we are guided by this principle of enjoyment. If enjoyment is there, we are motivated to perform our duty or activity. But if the enjoyment, the sense of enjoyment is not there, there is no interest or inclination. And third, very formidable reason Arjuna gives is fear of sinful reaction. That because they are my relatives, if I fight, I have to kill. And if I kill, I'll be inflicted by sin. And fourth reason he gives is the destruction of the family tradition. So this is the recap. And these are the reasons. So these reasons are there in our life also. When we are supposed to perform our duty, our dharma. What is our dharma? Our dharma is not Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, and aapas mein sab pehle ladai. No. That is the misinterpretation of dharma. Dharma means to perform one's duty. And how one has to perform duty? With love. So dharma teaches us love. But Arjuna decides not to fight, and he sees the reverses of performing duty. So he wants to give up his dharma. He wants to give up the fight. For every individual, the dharma cannot be the same. So for a student, the dharma is to study. He should study. He should devote his energy. He should devote his time and his focus to study the subject matters. And for a married man, the dharma is to protect the family and to earn for the family. And for a married female, the dharma is to care for the family. So individually, the dharma, according to one's social order and social status, it changes. So Arjuna seizes the reverses, and Arjuna is not willing to fight. So the overview of this chapter, this is a big chapter, the second biggest chapter in the Bhagavad-Gīta. And this chapter is called the contents of Gita summarized. Very, very interesting and very important. Because it says the content of Gita summarized. That means whatever is contained in Bhagavad-Gīta is summarized in this chapter. But it is actually this is the entire overview of entire Bhagavad-Gīta. This chapter is the overview of entire Bhagavad-Gīta. What all is contained within Bhagavad-Gīta is within this chapter. And it is divided in 4 sections. To always remember it, very simple, I will take the word G. So the crisis management. The first 10 verses speak about the crisis management in which Arjuna finds himself. In our life also we come across such situations almost every day. What is the crisis? Whenever our mind is disturbed. Whenever the peace of mind gets distorted, there is a crisis. So we face the crisis in hand. So that is the first 10 verses. We'll try to discuss the first 10 verses today to whatever extent we can. And the second section talks about the real identity. What is the identity of the individual? That he is not this body, neither is his mind, nor his intellect, of course not his false ego. But the paradox is, the irony is, we have our identification with only these outer coverings. So Bhagavad-Gīta gives us the comprehensive knowledge and learning to get the insight of what we are inside. That is the eternal soul. That is the real identity. And how to come to this realization that we are not this body, nor even the flickering mind. So Krishna advises Arjuna, and through Arjuna, all of us, that we should all perform our duties very diligently and without detachment. Duties have to be performed very diligently and with detachment. And there are 2 duties to perform. What are the 2 duties? One is the occupation duty As I spoke, one who is in the student life, he has to study. One who is in the married life, he has to earn, and that is the occupational duty. But apart from being the body and the mind, we are also the soul proper. So, what is the duty of the soul? So, Krishna talks about that with two duties. And if one performs these two duties, so he can experience eternal happiness or sustained happiness. Why? Because he realizes his self, which is beyond the temporary body and the mind. So this is all about this chapter. So we will take the first verse because in this spiritual scientist course, we are trying to go verse by verse, not leaving the verses. So the first verse opens with the scenario, the situation where Arjuna is finding himself. I hope it is okay with all of you, those who have joined for the first time. Because this course is in English, if someone is having any difficulty, then I will try to mix a little bit of Hindi. But normally the course content is in English. So the last verse of the first chapter spoke about the situation of Arjuna. What Arjuna is facing. That the last verse says that evam ukva Arjunam sankhe rathopastha upavishat sasajjam sasanam chapam shoka samvigna manasa. That Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, what Arjuna spoke about these four arguments, the reasons why he does not want to fight, why he does not want to perform his duty. So he cast aside because his mind was very much disturbed. And he sat down on the chariot. Sat down on the chariot. This is another evidence that he is not willing and wanting to fight. His mind overwhelmed with grief. Why? Because the disturbance is coming not from outside. The disturbance is coming from inside, from within. And that is from the uncontrolled mind. So today's first word in the second chapter. Okay, should I show it on the screen? The verse? I think that would be better. Is it visible? The screen is visible? Yes, no?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So this is the first verse of the second chapter. Sanjay continues to speak, but Sanjay is giving the life commentary of what is the psychophysical situation of Arjuna. He says, Tam satha kripaya vishnam ashru purna kuleshanam vishidantam idam vakyam vacha madhusudana. So Sanjay at that time, some 5,000 years back, he was given this very special vision. We have television, but Sanjay had the divine vision. And through the divine vision, he could see a distant place from Hastinapur to Kurukshetra, what was happening on the battlefield. Not only on the television, we can see the characters or what is the event which is happening, but what is happening inside the heart of the person that cannot be. But here Sanjay has that divine vision. He can see what is inside the heart of Arjuna and what is in the mind of Arjuna. So he says that Tam Satha Kripaya Vishnam. Arjuna's heart is filled with compassion. Avishtam. Avishtam means it is overwhelmed with compassion. Kripaya is compassion. And his eyes, his heart is filled with compassion and his eyes are filled with tears. Ashru Purna Kuleksham. His eyes are filled with tears. And then Arjuna begins to speak. Vishidantam idam vakyam. Vakyam is to speak. Speech. And he tells to Krishna. So it's very interesting that Arjuna, such a formidable warrior, uh, someone who cannot be matched in the progress of strength and uh, warfare, he is having a situation where his eyes are filled with tears. So Sanjay said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana Krishna spoke the following words. So seeing the situation of Arjuna, Krishna could not resist. And we will see from the next verse, Krishna will speak. So Bhagavad-Gita is not just fully exhibiting the feelings and emotions of Arjuna. What is the feeling of Arjuna? He is feeling compassionate. And what is the emotion he is exhibiting? He is crying. Just imagine a powerful Kshatriya, Arjuna, who makes other cry. If the enemy comes to know that on the opposite side there is Arjuna as the warrior, either they will run away or they will cry. Why? Because Arjuna's arrow has such might that he can force everyone else to cry. He has the penetrative power to kill everyone. But because his mind is disturbed and the negativity which is being overwhelming from the mind has overtaken the balance and the serenity of Arjuna to such an extent that instead of fighting and gaining victory over his rivals, Arjuna is crying. So let us see what Srila Prabhupada speaks. Prabhupada speaks about Arjuna's weakness. He says material compassion, lamentation and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. So such signs are evident from those. We also see in many life situations where we feel that, it was very unexpected, or we feel sometimes betrayed, or we see sometimes bruised, beaten and bruised by someone whom we had trusted very much, or whom we were in love with someone, and he betrays us. So what is this? The mind gets depressed and the eyes are full of tears. So Prabhupada says material compassion, lamentation and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. So why we fall in such a situation? Because we do not know who we are. We are only attaching our identity with the externals, with the impermanent, not with the reality. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. So Bhagavad-Gita teaches us the science of self-realization. So compassion for the soul is the real thing. But compassion for the dress or for the outward body is ignorance. So Arjuna is showing ignorance. And through Arjuna, all of us are showing ignorance of our real self. The word Madhusudana is demon Madhu. And now Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken the discharge of his duty. So many times we will see in our real life that we will be perplexed, we will be confused, we will not be able to decide. So, but Arjuna is facing the situation and compassion for the dress of a drowning soul. Man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean of nishads cannot be saved simply by rescuing the outward dress. So this is very interesting. A man fallen in the ocean of nishads. What is nishads? Nishads is again ignorance. And this nishads is how vast or how deep or how big is compared to the ocean. For the ocean, you cannot imagine that what is the length and what is the depth. It is unestimable. It might be estimatable, but if someone who wants to cross the ocean, how much is the possibility? Have you ever heard a swimmer, a world champion who has crossed the ocean, Pacific Ocean, or Indian Ocean or Atlantic Ocean? What is the possibility? There is no possibility. So the ignorance that is there in our heart is compared to the ocean. Why? Because we are lacking self-realization. So Bhagavad-Gīta removes the ignorance, or rather the source of ignorance. What is the source of ignorance? Is our wrong identification of what we think we are. To the extent we are identifying ourselves with body and mind, and of course our false ego. To that extent, in our life we will experience lamentation. Lamentation, to understand, is show. We will always be disappointed. But one who is perfected the science of self-realization, he has come to the realization of the eternal self. There is no question of any suffering. Miseries will be there. See, try to understand. Several miseries, all these three miseries which we showed will be there in the life. But suffering will not be there. Miseries are inevitable, but suffering is optional. So to the extent one is situated on the real self, there is no question of suffering. He is happy because this is the character of soul that is always happy, is Anandamaya Vyasa. But to the extent we misidentify, we suffer. And Arjuna is grossly misidentifying, and he is showing such acute state of suffering that he is even crying. He is even crying. Well, continue to read. One who does not know this, what he does not know, that he is the soul proper. One who does not know this and laments for the outward dress is called a Shudra. So Shudra is a class of man who is not situated in knowledge. The Kali Yuga class of men, the age that in which we are, or so-called modern age, this age is this class of men. What? Everyone is ignorant of the self. Hardly anyone knows who he is. Many times we meet people and we introduce ourselves. And how do we introduce ourselves? Through our name, or through our position or rank or profile that we are having. But all of it is changing. It is changing every moment. So Shudra is one who Hare Krishna. Are you able to hear?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So Shudra is one who is ignorant of the self. That is the soul. So going by this scientific definition, everyone in Kali Yuga is Shudra. That is why it is said Kalau Shudra Sambhava. But it is not necessary that everyone who is in a Shudra remains a Shudra. He can become a Brahmana. Brahmana means one who has realized this self. Brahman, that one is born in a Brahmana family becomes a Brahmin. No. It is on the basis of one's realization and one's knowledge. So here we see that Arjuna is, although he is a Kshatriya, but he is showing all symptoms of being a Shudra. Why? Because he is not willing to perform his duty. He is not willing to perform his dharma. So to the extent we are not performing our duty, our dharma, everyone is a Shudra. Rather, even lower than a Shudra. Because even a Shudra performs his duty. What is the duty of the Shudra? That he serves all other classes. So Arjuna is showing compassion, and this compassion is based on his ignorance. So further Prabhupada says that no one knows where compassion should be applied. No one knows where compassion should be applied, because everyone is applying his compassion on the basis of the body, on the basis of his attachments. But where the compassion is to be applied, on the basis of one's real identity, which is the soul. So Bhagavad-Gīta teaches us to realize the real self, which is soul, and to become compassionate. How? Is by giving this knowledge of Bhagavad-Gīta to others, by elevating them to come out from the ocean of ignorance, to be situated in knowledge, to realize the self, which is beyond temporary body and beyond the flickering mind. So one who does not know this and one who laments for the outward dress is called Shudra, or one who laments unnecessary. So actually for the soul, there is no misery. The misery is only to the extent we identify ourselves with the body, and as I said, with the subtle body, which comprise of our mind, intelligence and false ego. Arjuna was a Kshatriya and his conduct was not expected from him. It was not expected from Arjuna that he would deny or he would run away from performing his duty or his dharma. Lord Krishna, however, can dissipate the lamentation of the ignorant man. So this is the purpose of Bhagavad-Gīta. Why Bhagavad-Gīta was spoken? The purpose of Bhagavad-Gīta is to remove ignorance. Because ignorance is the cause of our suffering. If we are situated in knowledge, there is no question of suffering. So if we want to really terminate all suffering from our life, from our experiences, what we have to do, we have to be situated in knowledge. And this knowledge is disseminated in the Bhagavad-Gīta. For this purpose, the Bhagavad-Gīta was sung by him. So Prabhupada is emphasizing that the purpose of Bhagavad-Gīta is only one: to remove the suffering. How? By removing the source of suffering, which is ignorance. So if we remove the ignorance, then there is no question of any suffering. So what we will experience? We will experience joy. We will experience happiness, ananda. Everybody wants to be happy. Every endeavor that the living entity takes is motivated or guided by this desire, the core of the desire to become happy. But are we experiencing happiness? No. And it will never be. Why? Because the source of happiness is knowledge. The source of happiness is not object. The source of happiness is knowledge. And Bhagavad-Gīta equips us with this knowledge. So this chapter instructs us in self-realization and the analytical study of the material body and the spirit soul. As explained by the Supreme Authority, Lord Shri Krishna, this realization is possible. So although this knowledge is there in Bhagavad-Gīta, the difference between the body and the soul, the difference between the temporary and the eternal. But irrespective of it being available in the pages of Bhagavad-Gīta, it cannot be experienced or realized by everyone. Why? Prabhupada gives the reason. Prabhupada says, this realization is possible when one works without attachment. This is the condition. We will discuss that. Bhagavad-Gīta in detail will discuss what it means to work without attachment. Both without attachment and without aversion. One cannot perform duty if he is guided by one's own attachment and aversion. So to the extent one has overcome his attachment and aversion by the shining lamp of the knowledge of Bhagavad-Gīta, he can realize the sun. And is situated in the fixed conception of the real self. So let us see what Krishna speaks. This is the first verse which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, speaks in Bhagavad-Gīta. And please keep in mind the situation of Arjuna. Arjuna's eyes are full of tears. His skin is burning. He cannot remain standing on the chariot. He is completely depressed and dejected. And in such a situation, if your best friend sees you, when you are full of tears, your heart is filled with emotion and feeling and you are crying. And what does Krishna speak? Very interesting. Krishna says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Rulamani, you show the verse. You show the verse. Kutasva kashmalamidam vishame samupastitam kanarijushtam asvargyam akirtikaram Arjuna. So the first verse or the first words, the opening words which Krishna speaks in Bhagavad-Gīta, he chastises Arjuna. He says, from where? Kutasva kashmalamidam. From where has this impurities, this weakness, it has arisen in your heart? Arjuna is saying this is compassion, and Krishna is saying this is weakness, this is impurities. Kutasva. From where have these impurities surfaced in your heart? Vishame samupastita. In the honor of crisis. So this is leading you to be in a situation of crisis. And you are acting as if you are an Arya. Anarya Jushtam. Aryan means the warrior class. The Aryan class means that is the best of the class. So Arjuna is not acting like an Aryan. Arjuna is acting as an Aryan. An Aryan means he is acting opposite to what he should be doing. And his act will not lead him to any advancement. Rather, it will degrade him. Krishna says that anarya jushtam swargyam. Jushtam is practice. So, Arjuna is not practicing what he should be doing. He is not practicing the Arya path. He is practicing the anarya path. So that practice will lead him to degradation. Where? Aswarga. Swarga means the heavenly planets. Heavenly planets, everybody aspires, you see. Whenever any family member dies, so how do we, tell others that my father has passed away and he has gone to the heavenly abode. मेरे पिताजी का स्वर्गवास हो गया. No one says, have you ever heard कि नरकवास हो गया? No. Everybody has this aspiration at Swargavas. Everyone wants to have a vas, a residence in this Swarga, the heavenly planets. Why? Because he can enjoy. So Krishna is saying this anarya jushtam, this anarya practice, this practice of not performing your duty, it will not lead you to advancement. Rather, it will lead you to degradation. And not only degradation, akirti karam Arjuna. Akirti means infamy. Kirti means fame, name and fame. So everybody in this world is very much guided that he wants to have his fame spread. So Krishna is chastising Arjuna. He is opening the eyes of Arjuna and saying that whatever you are exhibiting is useless, is senseless, is meaningless. Let us see the translation. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So another interesting aspect is when Dhritarashtra was speaking, the author of Bhagavad-Gīta is Vyasadeva, Vedavyas, who compiled all the Vedic literature. He wrote Dhritarashtra Uvacha. And when Duryodhana is speaking, he says Duryodhana Uvacha, or rather he says Sanjay Uvacha. When Arjuna is speaking, he says Arjuna Uvacha. But when Krishna is speaking, Vedas does not write that Krishna Uvacha. He says Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Can you show that? Just go ahead. On top. Yes. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. So Krishna is not in the class of men, of Dhritarashtra or Duryodhana or even Arjuna or Satya. He is beyond the class of humankind. He is the Supreme Lord, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Okay, come to the translation. Come down. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Shri Bhagavan means the Supreme Person. There may be many Bhagavan, but there is only one Supreme Bhagavan. After that, Bhagavad-Gīta will reveal who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you?" The emotions, the compassion which is being shown by Arjuna, Krishna is not approving. Rather, he is disapproving. They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. So Aryan also means one who knows the value of life. They lead not to a higher planet, it is Aswargya, but to infamy, it is a Kirtikaram. So Prabhupada talks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Bhagavan Vacha. This is very, very formidable that from here, actually, the Supreme Lord decides to speak. Before this, Krishna does not speak directly in the first chapter. Krishna remains silent. Why? Because Arjuna was speaking. And what he was doing, he was arguing. So Arjuna was not in a mood to listen. So Krishna did not speak. And even after giving so many reasons, his arguments, it did not do any good to Arjuna. So Prabhupada talks about, Srila Prabhupada who has given this Bhagavad-Gīta to us, the Bhagavad-Gīta as it is, how Krishna spoke and how Arjuna understood. So Krishna and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are identical. So this is very revolutionary. We know so many Bhagavans in the Indian Vedic text and also in the Indian society. We consider so many people to be Bhagwan, so many demigods and so many other personalities to be Bhagwan. But no one is the Supreme Personality of God. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Shri Krishna. And they are identical. Therefore, Lord Krishna is referred to as Bhagwan throughout the Gita. Bhagwan is the ultimate in the absolute truth. We discussed about absolute truth yesterday. The absolute truth means that can never change. Everything in this material world is relative, is subject to change. So the truth also changes. One of the example of the truth is we have our Indian Constitution. Considered to be the guiding principle for all of us to have law and justice in the country. But you see how many amendments are there? So many. It keeps changing. So everything in this material world is relative, it is changing. But there is no change in the absolute truth. And who is the absolute truth? That is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And who that Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Shri Krishna. And who is giving this conclusion? Not me and you. That has no value. This conclusion is given by none other than Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva, the one who has compiled all the Vedic literatures. Like if PhD degree is to be given to one of the students, it cannot be accorded by any other student. Does that degree have any value? Supposedly, Sonika decides to give Dipankar one PhD. What value it has? Nothing. From where the PhD can come? It can come from only from the authorized institution or from the authorized source. And what is the authorized source? Is the ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Unless and until they approve, it has no meaning. So similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, is Lord Shri Krishna. And who is confirming this? This is being confirmed by the greatest authority who has given all the Vedic wisdom, who has given all the scriptures. That is Vyasadeva himself. And that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Absolute Truth, is realized in three phases of understanding. And what are these three phases? Very interesting. The Brahman, that is the impersonal or persuasive spirit. So we see that everything which is eternal, or everything which has a permanent existence, that is called the Brahman platform. That which will never end. That is the Brahman platform. That is the first level. That is the first level of understanding the Supreme Absolute. But higher than that or advanced than that is the Paramatma feature, or the localized aspect of the Supreme within the heart of all the living entities. So the Supreme Lord in his Paramatma feature as the Super Soul, he resides in the heart of each and every individual. He expands himself unlimitedly, and he is realized in the form of Paramatma. That is the second level, but still not the final level, not the highest level. And the third or the final level or the completeness is Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Vyasadeva gives the, Prabhupada cites the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is another textbook which is the conclusion of all the Vedic scriptures. It talks about this verse which says, go down, Golamani. Vadanti tat tat vidastatva yajnanam advyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. The absolute truth is realized in three phases of understanding by the knower of the absolute truth. So we are all seeking the supreme absolute truth. We all want to realize the supreme absolute truth. So all those who are seeking, they can have, they are as Brahman, the all-pervasive feature, that is, which is having the eternity concept. That is only one understanding. That the second is of knowledge, that is Chit. Sat is the eternity, then there is Chit, which is knowledge, that is Paramatma, and Bhagavan, which is bliss. So every soul, every individual person, every living being, maybe in human species or maybe in some other species of life, is seeking only one thing. What is that? That is the real bliss. So that bliss is experienced when one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is Bhagavan Vishnu. That is Bhagavan feature. So these three divine aspects stand this, how to relate, how to connect. It's like we all see the sun. But how do we see the sun? We see the sun from far distance, millions and millions of miles away. So the example of a sun, which has three different aspects, namely the sunshine. What we see the sunshine. The sunshine reaches the earth. It is not the sun that comes to us. If the sun comes a little closer to the earth, it will create havoc. The temperature will go so high, it will soar so much that everything will be burned. So the sun does not come. What comes to us is the ray of the sun, which we call as the sunshine. So the sunshine and the sun surface and the sun planet itself. So there are three levels. Similarly, all of us also have three levels. What are the three levels? First is the gross body. That is the external level. Then within the gross body, we have the another body, which is called the subtle body. That subtle body is not visible, but that subtle body drives the gross body. And the subtle body consists of our mind, our intelligence, and our false ego. Can we see these elements? No. But does it mean because we cannot see this does not exist? They do exist. But beyond both, the gross and the subtle is the real self, which is the soul. So there are also three levels. So just to relate and to connect and to understand. So one who can enter into the sun planet is the highest. Ordinary students who are satisfied by simply understanding the sunshine, its universal pervasiveness, and the glaring effulgence of its personal nature may be compared to those who can only realize the Brahman feature of the absolute truth. So like you have PhD. PhD not for everyone. First one has to clear his schooling. One has to become graduate. That is another level. Then one has to become a postgraduate. And when he clears that post-graduation level, then he enters into the level or the arena of doing doctorate or PhD. So at all levels, the realization or the understanding is not the same. Like a class 5-year student also studies algebra. And a class 12-year student also studies algebra. And a BSc student also studies algebra, but their levels are different. Their texts are different. So similarly, the supreme absolute truth is realized in three phases. Is the all-pervasive Brahman, which is the first level, the elementary level. Then higher than that is the Paramatma feature, when one is able to see the presence of super soul in every soul. That is the Paramatma feature. That is more advanced than Brahman, but not the ultimate. And the final or the complete level is the Bhagavan feature. So Bhagavad-Gīta gives us the realization of the Bhagavan feature. It does not restrict or limit us to remain at the Brahman or Paramatma platform. It gives us the complete knowledge. That is why Bhagavad-Gīta is such a complete book. There is no scripture in the world which can compare to the knowledge and depth of Bhagavad-Gīta, because it gives us the complete realization and knowledge of the Supreme Lord Bhagavan. Okay, so all students, they cannot be compared, or they are not in the same category. Go down to the next. I have just a few minutes left for 8:30. I want to complete this verse. Go down, Prabhu. Scroll down the screen.
Yes, Prabhuji, I am in that page, Prabhuji.
That's all. After this category, the verse is over. No, it's a big purpose. Can you see the screen scrolling down? I can't see. Now it has scrolled. Yeah, go further down. The Sanskrit word Bhagwan. Okay, I'll read. The screen is not working properly. The Sanskrit word Bhagwan is explained by the great authority Parashar Muni, the father of Vyasadeva. Your screen does not match. I don't see the text in the screen. The father of Vyasadeva. Yeah, come down. Yes. The father of Vyasadeva is a supreme personality who possesses all riches, all strength, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all. So one Bhagwan, not anyone and everyone can claim to be Bhagwan. Who is Bhagwan? The categorization or the definition of Bhagwan is enumerated here. That one who possesses, or one who is having all riches, all the Aishwarya, then all strength. He is all powerful, or rather, he is the source of all power. He is the source of all wealth and all riches. We see today, just recently I came to know that Mr. Ambani is no more the richest Indian. There is someone else who has, superseded him. That is one Mr. Adani. Ambani has been overtaken by Adani. So Ambani is no longer. He cannot say that he has all the riches. Of course, he has. He cannot claim that he has all the riches of the country, or even of Mumbai, or even of the province or territory where he stays. But Bhagavan means one who is the possessor of all riches, or rather, he is the source of all riches, all strength, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation is called Bhagavan. So this is the 6 aspects. It is called Shad Aishwarya Purna. Aishwarya Samagrasya Veerasya Yashashashya. Then Jnana Vairagya and Jnana and Vairagya. So one who has all these 6 opulences in completeness, only that personality can be called as Bhagavan. So there are many persons who are very rich, very powerful, very beautiful, very famous, very learned, and very much detached. But no one can claim that he possesses all riches, all strength. Only Krishna can claim this because he is the supreme personality of God. It's another aspect of understanding who Bhagavan is. That he is the supreme absolute truth, and one who is possessing all this in fullness, in completeness. No living entity, including Brahma or Lord Shiva or Narayan, can possess opulence as fully as Krishna. So Krishna exhibited all the 64 qualities, whereas the other incarnations or other personalities or other demigods, they cannot exhibit 64 opulences or features, which is exhibited by Krishna. Not even Narayan, not even Lord Ram. It is only with Krishna. We will give the details later. In coming sessions, we will give that. Therefore, it is concluded in the Brahma Samhita. So another authority who is confirming that only Krishna is Bhagavan is Lord Brahma himself, who is the chief engineer of this entire material creation. So no one is equal or above him. He is the primeval Lord of Bhagavan, known as Govinda, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. So Prabhupada quotes the verse from Brahma Samhita, which says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. So there are many personalities possessing the qualities of Bhagavan, but Krishna is supreme because no one can excel him. Another name of Krishna is Asamurdhava. Asama. Sama means equal. No one is equal, and Urdhva means higher. So neither anyone is equal, nor anyone is higher. That means what? Everyone is less or lower. So Krishna is the only personality who is the supreme personality of Godhead. And his body is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. It's Sachidananda Vigraha. Vigraha means the embodiment or the personification. So what is his personification? Is of Sat, that is eternity, Chit, which is knowledge, so there is no ignorance. So whoever worships Krishna, his life cannot have any ignorance in his heart. And he will always experience bliss, is Ananda. He is the primeval Lord Govinda and the causes. So go further down. I will complete this at least. I will complete this verse. So all the list of the incarnations of Godhead are submitted with other planetary expansion or parts of the planetary expansion. But Krishna is the only supreme. So Prabhupada gives another authoritative evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam that ete chams kalaha puncha Krishnastu Bhagavan Saram Indrari Vyakulam Loke Mudayanti Yuge Yuge. So there are many incarnations, as we know the Dasha avatars, and there are so many other avatars. But none of them can be compared to Krishna, because they are all the planetary portion of the portion of Krishna. So they exhibit only a portion of Krishna's opulence. But Krishna in itself, he is the source and the possessor of all opulence, and he is the reservoir of all opulence. He is in complete, he is in fullness. Therefore, Krishna is the original supreme personality of Godhead, the absolute truth, the source of both the super soul and the impersonal Brahman. In the presence of the supreme personality of Godhead, Arjuna. So now we come to the Arjuna situation. Now let us be clear from whom we are taking knowledge. We are not taking knowledge from any ordinary source. We are taking the knowledge from the supreme personality of Godhead. So if we take knowledge from any ordinary source, we cannot be free from lamentation and miseries in our life. But if we agree to accept knowledge from the most authoritative source, which is the supreme personality of Godhead, there is no question. So Arjuna is creating the sufficient ground that why he will accept Krishna as his spiritual master, because he wants to receive this knowledge. When we present the supreme personality of Godhead, Arjuna's lamentation for his kinsman is certainly unbecoming, and therefore Krishna expressed his surprise with the word Kutaha, where from such impurities were never expected from a person belonging to a civilized class of man known as Aryans. The word Aryan is applicable to person who knows the value of life. So Aryan means one who knows the value of life. And what is the value of life? is the eternal soul, not the temporary body or the flickering mind. And who have a civilization based on spiritual realization. So Aryan means one who has realized that he is the soul, and not only that, he lives his life on the basis of being the soul. His life is full with spiritual realization. Persons who are led by the material conception of life do not know the aim of life, the realization of the absolute truth, Vishnu or Bhagavan. And they are captivated by the external features of the material world. And therefore, they do not know what liberation is. Persons who have no knowledge of liberation from material bondage are called non-Arya. That is why, because hardly anyone is experiencing this knowledge of the soul. So we are all non-Aryans. And what is the other word for non-Aryans? Shudra. Or rather lower than Shudra. One who is drowning in the ocean of nations, ignorance. Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was deviating from his prescribed duty by declining to fight. This act of cowardice is described as befitting the non-Aryans. Befitting means which is not fitting. Such deviation from duty does not help one in the progress of spiritual life. So if one really wants to progress in life, one has to come to the platform of performing his duty. Whether he likes or he dislikes. Whether he feels joy or he feels pain. Irrespective of whatever his feeling is, or whatever his experience is. If one wants to progress, if one wants to advance, he must perform his duty. This is the message from this verse. Nor does it give one the opportunity to become famous in this. But Lord Krishna did not approve of the so-called compassion of Arjuna for his kinsman. So I will stop here, stop the share. It is past 8:30. So in our first two verses, we saw that what is the situation of Arjuna. And it relates to all of us, not just most of us. In our real life situation, we are very much depressed, dejected, or we are not having proper motivation to perform service or our duty. But that is not approved by Krishna. That is disapproved by Krishna. The Bhagavad-Gīta teaches us to perform duty how? When one is situated in knowledge. And how to be situated in knowledge is by hearing Bhagavad-Gīta or accepting the principles of Bhagavad-Gīta. Ignorance is removed, and when one is situated in knowledge, he will automatically perform duty. He will not run away from duty. So Arjuna's not fighting is not an act of valor, rather is an act of cowardice. Kayata. It is not Shurata or Veerata, but it is Kayata. So I'll stop here. If you have some question or some doubt or some comment, you can speak. You will see the second set of verses also. So Krishna is laying down the foundation to speak Bhagavad-Gīta. No question from anyone? Everything is clear? Our life is free of all suffering, all lamentation. Most of our viewers are today invisible. Yes, Dolamani Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, what you told that if one wants to progress in life, he must perform his duty.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji. So both of his duty means both occupational duty and second part is the constitutional duty. So
That will come in Bhagavad Gita, it will come. Occupational duty is based on Varna and Ashrama. And constitutional duty is the duty which is based on the realization of soul. That is the eternal soul. It is to perform service to the Supreme Lord. It will come. There will be a great detail of description. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the first 6 chapter talks about duty only, karma. Karma yoga. When one performs duty, that karma becomes yoga. That becomes dharma. The dharma of the jiva is to perform his duty. Okay, so we will stop here because not much question is coming. Okay, yes, Mamta, boliye.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, it is mentioned that Krishna has a all opulence, means 64 opulence. But my question is that ki other devotee does not have a.
Opulences are 6, but Krishna manifests 64 of his attributes or qualities. That is the completeness, which is not exhibited by anyone else.
Yes, Prabhuji. प्रभु जी मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि मतलब जैसे जो अदर डेमिगॉड्स हैं और जैसे जो विष्णु जी हैं उनके इसमें भी उनके ग्लोरिफिकेशन के लिए डिफरेंट डिफरेंट पुराण मेंशन है, जैसे विष्णु पुराण, गरुण पुराण, शिव पुराण. तो कृष्णा के लिए अगर इतने मतलब वो पूरे अगर कंप्लीट है तो उनके लिए अलग से पुराण क्यों मेंशन क्यों नहीं है, कृष्ण पुराण करके?
उसने कहा पुराण नहीं है. श्रीमद् भागवतम पुराण अमलम यद वैष्णवानां प्रियम. Srimad Bhagavatam is the Amal Puran. This is the conclusion of not just the Puran, of all the Vedic version. What does Srimad Bhagavatam talk about? It establishes, it says, Janmadiyas yataha itarastha tateshu abhignasvara. The first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam begins. Bhagavad-Gīta establishes that who is the Supreme Absolute Truth? That is Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam begins. Srimad Bhagavatam is for those who have realized that Krishna is the Supreme Absolute Truth. That is why we should not be in a hurry to jump to Srimad Bhagavatam. Because what we will understand in Srimad Bhagavatam, we have not realized that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. Yeah. Srimad Bhagavatam talks about Krishna only. Krishna and his devotees. How Krishna reciprocates, or what are the loving exchanges with Krishna exhibits with his devotee. Srimad Bhagavatam is there. Srimad Bhagavatam is the conclusion. This is the last work which is given by Vyasadeva. The final. This is the conclusion of all the Vedic wisdom. That is why it is called Amal Puran. Krishna Swadhama Upagate Dharma Jnana Divisaha. Then this says Kalo Nashta Drishamesha Purano Varko Dhanodito. So Srimad Bhagavatam gives light and it dispels darkness from the lives of all those who are born in the age of light. So Bhagavatam is there, but don't worry. Bhagavatam establishes all these verses that we were speaking. Yete Chams Kala Punsha Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the Paribhasha Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam, which establishes. Vyasadeva gives the list of all the incarnations. And then he finally says that all these incarnations, the source of all of them is Krishna. Ete cha amsha kala pumsaha. So all of these incarnations are the incarnations that we know. Yes, very good. Bhagavatam means the description of Bhagavan. Very good. It is the description of Bhagavan. It's the description of Bhakta, Bhakti, and Bhagavan. That is Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Bhakta? Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji. Clear, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Okay, let us begin our continuation of Krishna book. The real nectar. Everything is nectar. Anything and everything which is connected to Krishna is only nectar. This Amrita. Tava Kathamritam Tapt Jivanam. Kavi Viritam Srimadaditam. Shravana Mangalam Srimadaditam. Puri Jananti Ye Kavi Jananti Ye Puri Jananti. Okay, Gulamani. Quickly, let us come to the first chapter. We will continue till 9:15. At least half an hour we will continue. Yeah, so that we can enter our consciousness into the nectar of Krishna book. So today we will start the introduction. Okay. Okay, we read the preface. So this is the an introduction speaks about this prayer. And Charitamrita is coming from the prayer. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, and after taking sannyas, he shifted his headquarters from Navdeep Dham. He went to Jagannath Puri, and after coming to Puri and taking darshan of Lord Jagannath, he took his first yatra, South India yatra. And to his South India yatra, his associates, they were never wanting to get themselves separated from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they all came till Alarnath. Alarnath is around 18 to 20 kilometers outside Puri. And from Alarnath, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told them to return back to Puri, and he proceeded towards South India. And this is the first prayer which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is singing and dancing. He says, Krishna, 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 He, Krishna, 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 He, Krishna, 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 Rakshama, Krishna, 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 Pahima, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in complete ecstasy. In his ecstasy, he is proceeding. Chaitanya Charitamrita described as if the lion, he moves in the forest without any fear. The Prabhupada says, while attempting to write this book, Krishna, let me first offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master. Om Vishnu Pad, Ashtotar Shad, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. Then let me offer my respectful obeisances to the ocean of mercy, Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna himself, appearing in the role of a devotee just to distribute. Go down. Prabhu, please be careful about the screen. Distribute the highest principles of devotional service. So while Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a devotee to distribute the devotional service. Devotional service or engagement in devotional service is only possible by a devotee. So the Lord himself becomes a devotee to distribute the opportunity to engage everyone in devotional service. Lord Chaitanya began his preaching from the country known as Gauda Desh, West Bengal. And as I belong to the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, I must therefore offer my respectful obeisances to the disciplic succession of that name. This Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya is also known as the Brahma Sampradaya because the disciplic succession originally began from Brahma Brahma instructed the same Narad, Narad instructed Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva instructed Madhav Muni or Madhvacharya. So we saw that the Vedic version is given by Vyasadeva. So he is coming also in the disciplic succession. Or the Prabhupada is offering obeisances, his respect to the entire chain of disciplic succession. Sri Madhavendra Puri, the originator of the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, was a sannyasi renunciate who belonged to the Madhva disciplic succession. He had many renowned disciples such as Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Prabhu, and Ishwar Puri. Ishwar Puri happened to be the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So let us offer our respectful obeisances to Ishwar Puri, Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Advaita Acharya Prabhu, Srivas Pandit, and Sri Gadadhar Pandit. Next, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Sri Vasudev Datta and the constant advocate of Lord Chaitanya, Sri Govinda. So Vasudev Datta is also one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's very dearmost associate, because Vasudev Datta showed real compassion. Real compassion is for the soul. And the constant friend of Lord Chaitanya, Mukunda, and also to Murari Gupta. And let us offer our respectful obeisances to the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Shri Rup Goswami, Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Shri Gopal Bhatt Goswami, Shri Jeev Goswami, and Shri Raghunath Das Goswami. Krishna himself has explained in the Bhagavad-Gīta that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And whenever there are discrepancies in the regulative principles of man's religious life, and the prominence of religious activity appears on this earthly planet, so Krishna comes to propagate the principles of dharma. And when there is rise of a dharma, when one does not perform his duty. So Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glani. What is dharma glani? Not performing his duty. So in other words, when Lord Krishna appeared, there was necessity of minimizing the load of sinful activities accumulated on this planet or on this universe. So whenever there is imbalance of one not performing dharma, then gradually what will happen? Adharma will rise. For affairs of the material creation, Lord Mahavishnu, the plenary portion of Krishna, is in charge. So Krishna has many incarnations, and one of them is Mahavishnu, who is the boss, the supreme boss of this whole material creation. He is in charge. And when the Lord descends, the incarnation emanates from Vishnu. Mahavishnu is the original cause of material creation. And from him, Garbhodakshai Vishnu expands, and then Shirodakshai Vishnu. Generally, all the incarnations appearing within the material universe are planetary expansions from Shirodakshai Vishnu. Therefore, the business of minimizing the overload of sinful activities on the earth does not belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna himself. But when Krishna appears, all the Vishnu expansions join with him. Krishna has different expansions, namely Narayan, the quadruple expansion of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Anuruddha, as well as partial plenary expansions like Matsya, the incarnation of a fish, and the Yuga Avatar nations, incarnations of the millenniums, and the Manavantar Avatar, incarnation associated with the regimes of the Manu. So there are 6 principal incarnations. Prabhupada is talking about that. All combined. So very important is that Janmashtami is coming. We should know Krishna does not appear alone. Whenever Krishna appears, with him all his incarnations and all his expansions, they also appear. So that is what Prabhupada is saying. All combine together and appear with the body of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is the complete whole, and thus all plenary expansion and incarnations always live with him, or rather within him. Therefore, when Krishna appeared, Lord Vishnu was with him. Krishna actually appears in order to demonstrate his Vrindavan pastime. What is the purpose of Krishna appearing? This is the purpose. Paritranaya sadhunam and vinashaya cha dushkitam. But vinashaya cha dushkitam is done by Narayan. Krishna only comes to exhibit the Vrindavan pastime. That is what the sadhu wants. The sadhu wants to always float in the pastimes of Vrindavan. And in this way attract the fortunate conditioned soul and invite them back home, back to Godhead. So this is the purpose of Krishna Karma. Is to perform his Vrindavan pastime and to attract all the conditioned soul to return home back to Godhead. The killing of demons in Vrindavan was carried out only by the Vishnu portions of Krishna. The Lord's abode is described in Bhagavad-Gīta's 8th chapter, 20th verse, where it is situated that there is another eternal nature, the spiritual sky. Partasmatu bhavyo anyat avyakta vyakta sanatana.
Prabhuji, you're on mute.
So the manifested world, this material world is only 1/4 rather, and the spiritual world is 3/4. So that 3/4 world which is not manifest here, and this material world which is manifested can be seen in the form of many stars and planetary systems, such as the sun and the moon. But beyond that, there is non-manifested portion, which is not approachable by anyone in this body. Why? Because that is manifested or that is approachable when one is in the spiritual body. One minute. Don't move this screen. But beyond there is the non-manifested portion which is not approachable by anyone in this body, and beyond that non-manifested matter is the spiritual kingdom. That kingdom is described in the Bhagavad-Gīta as supreme and eternal, never to be annihilated. This material nature is subjected to repeated creation and annihilation, but that part, the spiritual nature, remains as it is eternally. The living entity is also eternal, and the Lord's abode is also eternal. So there is compatibility, because the eternal living entity cannot experience happiness in this temporary world, which is non-permanent. The supreme abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is also described in the Brahma Samhita as the abode of Chintamani. Chintamani means that which fulfill all the desire. Money is a gem, and Chintamani means that can fulfill all the desires. So Brahmaji says, Chintamani prakhar sadneshu kalpa vriksha laksha vrateshu surbhir abhipalayanta. So that abode of Lord Krishna, known as Golok Vrindavan, is full of palaces made of touchstone. So everywhere there are these touchstones, and there are the kalpa vriksha. These are the desire fulfilling trees, and cows are called surabhi. The Lord is served there by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. Lakshmi Shahastra Sarva Sevya Mano. His name is Govinda, the primeval Lord, and he is the cause of all causes. But what does Krishna do there? There the Lord plays the flute. His eyes are like lotus petals, and the color of his body is like that of a beautiful cloud. On his head is a peacock feather, Varahapidam. Peacock feather is there on the head. He is so attractive that he excels thousands of cupids. Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobha. Lord Krishna gives only a little hint in the Gita of his personal abode, which is the supermost planet in the supreme spiritual kingdom. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, actually Krishna appears with all his paraphernalia and demonstrates his activities in Vrindavan. Then at Mathura, and then I have lost, where are you? Yeah, and then at Dwarka. The subject matter of this book will gradually reveal all these activities. The family in which Krishna appeared is called the Yadu dynasty. This dynasty belongs to the family descending from Soma. Soma is the god of the moon planet. Everybody wants to enjoy Somaras, but for that one has to go to the Soma Lok or the Soma planet. There are two different Kshatriya families of the royal order. One descending from the king of moon planet. Krishna appeared in this Vansha. That is, it is called as the Chandra Vansha. Chandra Vansha. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he generally appears in the Kshatriya family because he has to establish religious principles or the life of righteousness. The Kshatriya family is the protector of the human race according to the Vedic system. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he appeared in the family. Come down. Yeah. He appeared in the family descending from the sun god, known as Raghu Vamsha. And when he appeared as Lord Krishna, he did so as the family known as Yadu Vamsha. There is a long list of kings of the Yadu Vamsha in the 9th canto, 24th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. All of them were great powerful kings. Krishna's father's name was Vasudev. So Krishna's name is Vasudev. His father's name is Vasudev, and he is the son of Vasudev, is called as Vasudev, son of Surasena. And the father of Vasudev was Surasena, descending from the Yadu dynasty. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not belong to any dynasty of this material world. But the family in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears becomes famous by his grace. For example, sandalwood is produced in the state of Malaya. Sandalwood has its own qualifications apart from Malaya. But because accidentally this wood is produced in the state of Malaya, it is known as Malayan sandalwood. Similarly, Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead, to try to understand this principle that Prabhupada is explaining, belongs to everyone, but just as the sun rises from the east, although there are other directions from which it could arise, so by his own choice, the Lord appears in particular family, and the family becomes famous, becomes glorious. So Krishna chooses to appear in the Yadu Vamsha, Avatirniya Yadu Vamsha. So Bhagavatam says that he, on his own, he decided to descend in the Yadu Vamsha. As explained above, when Krishna appears, all his family expansions appear with him. Krishna appeared along with Balaram, Baladev, who is known as his elder brother. Balaram is the origin of Sankarshana, or the quadruple expansion. Balaram is also the family expansion of Krishna. In this book, the attempt will be made to show how Krishna appeared in the family of Yadu dynasty and how he displayed his transcendental characteristics. This is very vividly described in Srimad Bhagavatam, especially the 10th canto. And thus, the basis of this book will be the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Prabhupada wanted to give this gift to the humanity. That is the 10th canto. But he was not very certain that whether his age will prolong or not. And he was only on the 2nd canto when he gave the Krishna book. So he wanted to give everyone the gift of the 10th canto. So Prabhupada gave this Krishna book. So he says, and thus the basis of this book will be the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The pastime of the Lord are generally heard and relished by liberated souls. This is the qualification. Who can understand Krishna Lila? Only those who are mukta, those who are liberated. Those who are conditioned soul are interested in reading stories of the material activities of some common man. Although similar narrations describing the transcendental activities of the Lord are found in Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas, the conditioned soul still prefers to study ordinary narrations. They are not so interested in studying the narrations of the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And yet the description of the pastimes of Lord Krishna are so attractive that they are relishable for all classes of men. There are 3 classes of men in the world. One class consists of the liberated souls. Another consists of those who are trying to be liberated. At least we should come in this level. And the third consists of materialistic men. Whether one is liberated or is trying to be liberated or even grossly materialistic, the pastime of Lord Krishna are worth studying. Liberated souls have no interest in materialistic activities. The impersonal story that after liberation one becomes inactive. Gulamani Prabhu, please scroll the screen, go down. Further down. And need not hear anything does not prove that a liberated person is actually inactive. A living soul cannot be inactive. He is active either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state. A diseased person, for example, is also active, but his activities are all painful. The same person, when free from disease condition, is still active, but is in a healthy condition. The activities are full of pleasure. Similarly, the impersonalists only seek to get free from the disease conditioned activities, but they have no information of activities in the healthy condition. Those who are actually liberated and in full knowledge take to hearing the activities of Krishna. Those who are actually liberated and in full knowledge take to hearing the activities of Krishna. Such engagement is purely spiritual activities. Krishna Katha. It is essential for persons who are actually liberated to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. Who hears? Liberated person. And why it is essential for the liberated person? Because they will not become conditioned. The essential for persons who are actually liberated, it is essential for persons who are actually liberated to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. That is the supreme relationship subject matter for one in the liberated state. Also, if persons who are trying to be liberated hear such narration as Bhagavad-Gīta and Srimad Bhagavatam, then their path of liberation becomes. If we are hearing Bhagavad-Gīta and if we are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, today we are hearing both. First we heard from Bhagavad-Gīta and now Krishna book is a part of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the path my screen is not showing me what I was reading. Yeah. The Bhagavad-Gīta is the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam. By studying the Gita, one becomes fully conscious of the position of Lord Krishna. That Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the source of anyone and everyone. By studying the Gita, one becomes fully conscious of the position of Lord Krishna, and when he is situated at the lotus feet of Krishna, he understands the narration of Krishna as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Please mark these words of Srila Prabhupada. That when one is situated at the lotus feet of Krishna, he is surrendered to Krishna. Then one can understand the narrations of Krishna as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya has therefore advised his followers that their business is to propagate Krishna Katha. Krishna Katha means narration about Krishna. There are two Krishna Kathas. Narration spoken by Krishna and narration spoken about Krishna. The Bhagavad-Gīta is the narration or the philosophy on the science of God. That is why we have this name spiritual scientist. It is evidence. Bhagavad-Gīta is the narration of the philosophy of the science of God, spoken by Krishna himself. Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration about the activities and transcendental pastimes of Krishna. Both are Krishna Katha. In material existence, both are Krishna Katha. It is the order of Lord Chaitanya that Krishna Katha should be spread all over the world. Because of the conditioned soul suffering under the pangs of material existence takes to Krishna Katha, then their path of liberation will be open and clear. So if those who do not want to hear or they have no time of hearing, that means they don't want to be liberated. They want to eternally remain conditioned. The purpose of presenting this book is primarily to induce people to understand Krishna or Krishna Katha, because thereby they can become freed from material bondages. This Krishna Katha will also be very much appealing to the most materialistic person, because Krishna's pastime with gopis, cowherd girls, are exactly like the loving affair between young girls and boys. Within this material world, actually the sex feeling found in human society is not unnatural, because this same sex feeling is there in the original personality of Godhead. The same pleasure potency is called Srimati Radharani. The attraction of loving affairs on the basis of sex feeling is the original feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we, the conditioned souls, being part and parcel of the Supreme, have such feelings also. But they are experienced with world. Hear about Krishna's pastime with gopis, they will relish transcendental pleasure. Although it appears to be materialistic, the advantage will be that they will be gradually elevated to the spiritual platform. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that if one hears the pastimes of Lord Krishna with the gopis from authorities with submission, then he will be promoted to the platform of transcendental loving service of the Lord, and the material disease of lust within his heart will be completely vanquished. In other words, such hearing will counteract material sex life. So if one is wanting to overcome sex urges, what he has to do? He has to hear. This book, Krishna, which is filled with Krishna Katha, thus will appeal equally to the liberated of the persons who are trying to be liberated, as well as to the gross condition of the mystic. According to the statement of Parikshit Maharaj, who heard about Krishna from Sukhdev Goswami, Krishna Katha is equally applicable to every human being, whatever condition of life he is in. Surely everyone will appreciate it to the highest magnitude. But Maharaj Parikshit was also warned that persons constantly engaged in following the regulative moral principles of scriptures, no matter in what condition they are found, will certainly be attracted, but not persons who are killing themselves. So who will be attracted towards Krishna to hear Krishna Katha? Those who are following the regulative principles. Those who are not following regulative principles, they cannot hear. That is why again and again they will give excuses why they cannot find time. Why? Because they don't have the eligibility. So who can hear? One whose acharan is pure. One whose eating, sleeping, mating and defending has become pure. The exact word used in Srimad Bhagavatam is Pashubna, which means one who is killing animals or killing himself. Persons who are not self-realized and who are not interested in spiritual realization are killing themselves. They are committing suicide because this human form of life is specially meant for self-realization. By neglecting this important part of his activity, one simply wastes his time like the animals. So he is Pashubna. Pashubna means one who is the killer of the animal. The other meaning of the word refers to those who are actually killing animals. This means persons who are animal eaters, even dog eaters. For they are all engaged in killing animals in so many ways, such as hunting and opening slaughterhouses. Such person cannot be interested in the Krishna. Okay. Sheikh Parikshit was especially interested in hearing Krishna Katha because he knew that his forefathers, particularly his grandfather Arjuna, was victorious in the great battle of Kurukshetra only because of Krishna. We may also take this material world as a battlefield of Kurukshetra. Everyone is struggling hard for existence on this battlefield, and at every step there is a danger. According to Maharaj Parikshit, the battlefield of Kurukshetra was just like a vast ocean full of dangerous animals. His grandfather Arjuna had to fight with such great heroes as Bhishma, Drona, Karna and many others who are not ordinary fighters. Such warriors have been compared to the Timingla fish in the ocean. The Timingla fish can very easily swallow up big whales. The great fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra could swallow many Arjunas very easily. But simply due to Krishna's mercy, Arjuna was able to kill all of them. Just as one can cross with no exertion over the little bit of water contained in the footprint of a calf. So Arjuna, by the grace of Krishna, was able to very easily jump over the ocean of battle of Kurukshetra. It is 9:15. I will stop here. How much is left in this introduction? Just remember where we are stopping. Just make a sign. Okay, anyway, we are not reading. We are not reading. So, okay, stop the share. Okay, so I have made a commitment to myself and with the support of all of you that till Janmashtami we will try and read every day without fail the nectar from Krishna book. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share, and I look forward to be with you tomorrow. You have completed Krishna book, very good, but how much are you thinking about Krishna? Krishna says, Man mana bhav mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Till the time it happens, we have to continue. Okay, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad-Gīta यथारूप की जाए, Krishna the Supreme Personality of Godhead की जाए, Srila Prabhupada